That was the pilot of Twin Peaks. What do we think? And it was edited by this man right here, Duwayne. I mean, it's the greatest pilot of television ever. I think it's also the second greatest pilot. It's that good. I mean, it really is incredible.
Yes.
I mean, when you saw this footage coming in, were you like, this is television in 1990? I mean, it's mind-blowing.
You know, when David sent me the script, he sent the script and he said, ABC is going to give us $4 or $5 million to shoot this pilot. They're never going to air it. So let's just go have some fun and make a movie. And that's kind of what we did, and that was the mindset that we all were in. But this is David, and there's a reason this is a great pilot, and maybe even the second great pilot. And because think about this, it's perfectly constructed. Meaning, if this 43, 44-minute format were, it is a standalone piece, but if it was a traditional 3-act structure, I don't do fade outs to black unless there's a gun to my head. Those are commercial breaks. Okay, that's not us doing that. Those are commercial breaks. But this, the first act is basically finding the body. And then think what happens when you start introducing the characters. And what about Agent Cooper? Nobody ever seen anything like that. That's just, that guy, he's so interesting. Then there's mystery within mystery. Every single character you meet in this town, you just go, what? The woman with the drapes and Lucy and it goes on and on and on. And it keeps your attention. And I always say, I've been called in many times to help fix a movie. And movies that have a problem that need fixing all have the same problem. And it's 99.9% of the time. And that problem is you don't like the main character. So what can you do, in my case editorially, to adjust that? This, you don't have that problem. The guy's whittling wood and Douglas fir, and it's like those trees and the donuts. And by the way, that I don't know, that animal head, it just fell one night. And when they walked in the morning, there it was on the table. David said, that's perfect. Those are those magic moments that we all hope for and actually set the table for, hoping they happen, because you can't plan it. And when they do happen, you embrace it and say, okay, let's go.
And tell me about cutting Grace's scene to the Laura Palmer scene.
The phone?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that scene. Of course, I love the curtains opening, and I don't like missing the beginning. But the beginning of this pilot is, in my book, it is really, really, really tight. And it works. David's great direction, Angelo's music. Somehow that music, we're in the same groove. The picture's moving along. And the thing with Grace is she's a great actress. And the dailies were a little bit, I would consider maybe a little over the top, all that screaming and stuff. But when you construct it, and you're timing it out, and that's all cut without Angelo's music. Angelo put the music in later, and it just fits. So you're all in the same groove. You're in that groove, just like a record. You're in that groove, and you're staying in that groove. You don't get out of that groove. It's so hard to get into it. Most people never get in a groove. Anyway, the thing with Grace was, okay, so we're going along, and the sheriff shows up, and Leland is there, and he drops that phone. Well, that's just a pickup shot of a phone. You know, you use it or you don't. So I thought, well, okay, I'm not really that keen on Grace on camera. It seemed a little over the top. So I said, okay, I'll just construct her voice as the camera pans down, and then every little breath is put in there. And then notice, I was noticing, it's like she makes a noise, boom, goes Angelo. A noise, boom, goes Angelo. Then it gets quiet. Then it goes quiet. Then a little bit at the very end. Then you can cut to Grace screaming for maximum impact. I love that. I've seen it sometimes even here. It's out of context. It's just going down the phone. You go, huh? But when it's in context of the whole conversation and what's happening, where is Laura? Where is Laura? Where is Laura? It just works. You just go down that chord. And isn't that funny? We've been watching all these David Lynch movies. Every phone has a chord. Or every chord has a phone. It's like so old-fashioned. Anyway, I love that.
It's wonderful. I think the best shot is when Ray Wise is at the hotel and the sheriff is pulling up, and you know what's happening before it's happening, which happens throughout the pilot multiple times. But the funny part is it's kind of a oneer. So how do you feel about that as the editor? I mean the story is coming there. There's not a lot for you to do in that sense. But
I would be perfectly happy if I didn't have to do anything.
he's going to work on adolescence.
And I'm glad you made mention, because I almost mentioned that. That's a perfect shot. The timing is perfect. See, editing is all about timing, rhythm, pace. That's it. And you want to mine for emotion. Emotion is always at the top of the pyramid. Story is a sort of distant second, and everything else is always going for emotion. The timing on that shot is perfect. Leland on the phone, and it's swoop, goes the truck right back there, and my work's done. I don't have to cut to anything. Leave it alone. This story is being told, but it's being told by staying on and focusing on the emotion. That's the trick to it, and that's all credit to David.
And obviously a pilot is where it begins. Then there's going to be another episode after that. You have the greatest pilot
Well,
ever.
we never knew that
What,
for a long time.
what fool would direct the next episode after the pilot? I mean, where did they find someone desperate enough to take that job?
It was somebody in that Twin Peaks cutting room. OD'd on peanut M&Ms. No, David. When I first met David, he called me to work on Blue Velvet, and we met and got on, and we did Blue Velvet. But he knew I kept putting him off because he knew my aspiration was to direct. It's not so uncommon. People just seem to want to take the reins, but it's a whole different job for sure. My comfort level's in the cutting room. I guess I like dark rooms and solitude. The set is anything other than that. It's organized chaos. It's crazy.
Any chance you remember the first shot that you did?
Oh yeah.
Let me hear about it, because this is a story I don't know.
All right. Well, it was with Shelley, and at the house, Leo's truck. And the funny story is, because I edited the pilot, I think everybody figured I was a good choice to do the first episode, because it was months, almost a year before we shot again. And I know those characters. I had been living with them for a long while, and I helped to mold and form their character. So I had an assistant director named Bob Simon, and Bob came to me and he said, okay, I know it's your first time, and first time directors, they freeze up. He says, but here's the thing, I'm gonna be sitting right next to you, and if you feel me tap your leg like this, that means and Shelley, and we're at Malibu Lake, and everything's great, and I'm cool, and we get out there, and camera starts to roll, sound, and then the slate came out, and oh my God, there's my name on the slate, and I only ever dreamed of this. I've made my own little movies, but not like this, and there was my name on this slate, and all of a sudden, and I said, Bob, the tears are coming down my face. I said, Bob, just hang on, man. I'm going to enjoy this for a minute.
My favorite shot in your episode, which we're about to watch, is how you begin coming across the wall and then up to Kyle's legs and down. Scripted, or you laid it out, and how did you come up with that? It's such a great intro to Cooper again.
Well, thank you. Scripted was, there's a copy of the book Great Expectations on the bedside table, and Cooper's somewhere in the room, and that would, that's that. But this is a director's job. You take what the written word is, and not necessarily literally. You try to stay in a character, and when you have something like this, every scene has a surprise in it. So David is all about mystery, surprise, dream worlds. That pilot is full of it. So I thought, okay, what am I going to do here? And you go in this room, and it's only, 2 walls. And it's like, okay, what are we going to do? And I don't, who cares about the book? I don't think Cooper's the kind of guy that, lies in bed and reads Great Expectations. Maybe in the script stage, in that character, in the writer's mind, sure, that would make sense. But the character that we just saw, I'm not so sure. So I thought, all right, well, we got fish, we know fish, and the room, and hear him talk, and then I said, Kyle, can you hang upside down? And he says, what do you mean? And I said, well, I want to do something a little different. And he says, I have gravity boots. And I said, fantastic. Get your gravity boots. We'll put them to use. And there he is, hanging upside down. He's got his little recorder talking to Diane. And Diane, I don't know, well, there have been characters like this that...
on Rhoda, I can't think of who it was, but there was the doorman on Rhoda.
Yeah.
Anyone here old?
And Diane has a personality. You want Cooper to get on that little recorder and talk to Diane. You never see her, hardly ever hear her, but she's a character. And that's a testament to really great filmmaking in that pilot episode. And David and Mark both. Mark's a great writer, and the two of them together, you know where they collaborated, and it works pretty good. So anyway, that was it. And then I forget exactly the line, but who really shot JFK and whatever happened to Marilyn Monroe. That's just great. That's great writing.
I've always been curious about this. Episode 2, which we're also going to watch tonight, spills over from episode 1. Did David shoot that, or is that stuff from your episode that didn't fit in one that they click over? Like James is having dinner at the Hayward house. It starts at night, and every other episode starts in the morning. Do you remember if your episode?
Well, what I do remember is, because I've edited a lot for David, and we didn't know going into Twin Peaks. I forget how long the pilot episode script is, but television's very specific. You've got so many minutes and seconds to a commercial break, and you can kind of spread them out a little bit. There's 7 or 8 commercial breaks in this, but they have to fall in a certain kind of time length. So I don't recall what the pilot script length was. It really didn't matter, because I figured David was right. Nobody's ever going to air this thing. And So my script was 78 pages long. And when I shot it and cut it together, you have 7 days to shoot. And basically 7 days to edit. And we put it together and I was over an hour. So we had to take out about 30 minutes. And so I sounded the alarm and said, David, we got a problem here. If we're writing these scripts, you know, you're going to have half your story is going to be lost somewhere. It's never going to make it on the air if we ever go on the air. So I'm not quite sure. David directed episode 2 by number, but because he was directing Wild at Heart at that same time, Tina directed episode 3 right after I did 1. So the shooting went 1, 3, 2, but obviously it goes 1, 2, 3. So I don't know, but what I do know is that then we, Mark, David, and I, and others, we worked very hard to try and figure out, because you don't want to write stuff that's never going to make it because it's just too long, nor do you want to spend the time and energy and money to shoot something that's never going to make it. So you want to get that optimum length of script, and what we found out with Twin Peaks, because David's pace is very unique, 34 pages. 34. The program's 44 minutes. Generally speaking, 1 page of script equals 1 minute of screen time. So if you have a 120-page script, it's a 2-hour movie. This is different. This is David speed. And it took a while, to 1, 2, 3, maybe even to episode 4, before we got it down to where it was manageable, where, you know, you're not shooting 20 or 30 minutes more than you need, because the time that it took and the expense to do those extra 20 or 30 minutes could have been better spent elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, then I'm going to say that those 20 minutes in episode 2 are maybe from yours. You know, you don't have to bother me with the truth. That's just going to be I've always thought that, because it's felt that way, and I also knew that David filmed it later, so it makes sense that they tried to give him the least amount to shoot for.
Listen, when I did other episodes, I was trying to fit what I'd already shot in. It just lighten the load, and I could spend more time elsewhere.
Right.
But, you know, I don't know, because it was so crazy. We were editing Wild at Heart at the same time. The day I finished shooting that first episode of Twin Peaks, it's the same day David finished shooting the feature Wild at Heart. So we met in the cutting room, shared a couple of ideas and notes, and, you know, we had a whole week. We had Twin Peaks and Wild at Heart, and we just went to one cutting room to the next. And it was a real fun time.
That's why in episode 1 there's that shot of Laura Dern and Diane Ladd. No one understood why. Just a joke. Well, thank you for sharing all of your memories. What was the whole experience like for you, seeing your work over the last couple days, and we're about to see your directorial debut?
You know, I loved it, because every time you watch a movie, not necessarily one that you've worked on, but you watch a movie, for me, it's always different. It's a different audience, it's a different everything. And I really enjoyed, we started with Wild at Heart, and then Blue Velvet, and then Twin Peaks, and it was just fun to sit back and watch and kind of look back on the opportunity to spend so much time with David Lynch. Was really, you know, a blessing. And people often ask me, because I spent a long time with George Lucas, and then a long time with David, and I always said that if either of them ever called me, those are the 2 guys I'd go back and work for again. But people often ask me, what's it like working for George Lucas and David Lynch? They seem so different. They're not. They're all both supremely talented. They're both visionaries. Their approach to the filmmaking is very similar. Subject matter, miles apart, or universes apart. And, but David shoots around the movie, I shoot around the movie. George shoots around the movie. Steven Spielberg, Marty Scorsese, they shoot the movie. We shoot the movie around the movie, and we find it in the cutting room. And so my answer when people say, what was it like or is like working with George and David? I say I worked 7 years with